You're listening to the Make Space podcast, episode number 43.
Home, home, just wanna go, home, home, back home. I've been going for way too long. Home, home, just wanna go, home, home. I'm on my way back home.
Welcome to Make Space, a home design show made to inspire you to create spaces you truly feel at home in. Cara Newhart sits down with amazingly brilliant guests for conversations that dive deeper than pin-worthy rooms to tease out the essentials of creating spaces that feed your soul and inspire your creativity. From home design strategies to decor advice to interior design tips and tricks, these conversations help you dream up a beautifully lived-in home. Cara is the designer and chief creative enthusiast behind Never Skip Brunch. Her work has been featured in print publications like People Style Watch and Denver Style Magazine. As an influencer, Cara has collaborated with brands like Amazon, H&M, Twitter, and Thrillist. Here's your host, Cara Newhart.
Hello. I was going to be so serious with this intro, but I can't take myself seriously because it's raining and I'm like lurking in the closet with my snacks recording this podcast. So let's just dive into this episode because it seriously is so good. And I'm very excited for today's guest and some secret tips I have to share with you. So here we go. #obsessed. This week, I'm obsessed with two things from my recent closet makeover. So I did phase 1, which basically was decluttering and installing some pre-built like modular units that can stack up. So this is not my long-term plan, which is to go full out with crazy, really expensive looking built-ins. But for now, it added so much organization in my closet. Literally, it's like a totally different space. It's so organized. But the two things I'm most obsessed with in here, and it was stuff that you guys also were really obsessed with on Instagram if you caught the reveal. But number one is these gold S hooks. So it's just an S-shaped hook. It's like modern, like nice and flat, sort of like a bolognese noodle instead of like a spaghetti noodle that's round, if that makes sense. But I'm using these to hang up my jeans. So I just fold them in half, loop this through the back two belt loops, and then hang it on the closet rod, or I actually set up like a dowel rod situation, and it looks like a boutique. It's very bougie looking and fancy, and it's like a cute decor element in addition to being like organization. I like my closet to feel kind of like a boutique, kind of like an experience. And they're not that expensive. They're really cheap. I got them off Amazon, so I will link them. But I just love the look, and I love how organized my denim is, and they're gold. So, we love that around here. And then number 2 is a paint color. So this is something that we had this little live chat with the people that host Furniture Flip Challenge, the Builders Challenge, and it was Jessie and I, some other amazing makers, and then the editor of Better Homes and Gardens Do-It-Yourself magazine, Brian, who is amazing. But we were asking him like what kind of trends he sees happening this next year, and one of the ones he said was this like beigey gray. He was like, it's like gray, but it's like really looks like beige, but they're calling it gray. Basically grayish, I think, is the trend, but basically a very warm gray versus like a blue tinted gray. So that's what I went for in my closet because I think it looks so good, like as a balance with gold, and it really ties into natural textures like wood or caning or like basket textures. So the color I used is Toasty Gray by Bear, and it's so beautiful. If you're looking for a good gray and you don't want like gray from a few years ago that was very blue and very cold, that has had a moment. I think we're kind of getting over it. This is more of a warmer, warm gray. So that's what I'm using. It's called Toasty Gray, so sounds so warm. But yeah, I will link that in the description as well because I think it's really pretty, and I'm always down to recommend new paint colors for you to try because that's the easiest way to change it up in your space. So that is what I'm obsessed with for this week from my little closet makeover. Time to talk trends. So the trend that I'm highlighting this week is pampas grass. So, this is a really good way to bring the outdoors in a way that's excessively neutral, very clean and cream and white looking. So, pampas grass is that fluffy, it's like a giant pipe cleaner style stem. And you may have seen some hilarious TikToks, as I have, where people are running around trying to cut it off of different bushes around lakes. I would not recommend that because it can be kind of gross. You don't know where it's been. But I wanted to offer up 2 tips for rocking pampas grass in your space. If you like the neutral look, you like the added texture. So, number 1 is you can actually fluff it with a blow dryer. So, I would recommend taking it outside to do this, or at the very least, blowing it out of your back porch or patio door so that it's not in your house because it can cause a lot of floating fuzzies, but blow drying it can actually help to fluff up your pampas grass. Do this on the low setting and just kind of gently, it'll help fluff it. And then tip number 2, to keep it from shedding or collecting too much dust and to keep that fluffy shape, you can actually spray it with some hairspray. So I would recommend finding hairspray that doesn't have like an added shine element. You want more the matte look so that it's going to feel natural. And then I will link in the description the place I would get my pampas grass. I don't use this a ton in my house, but if I do use it, this is where it's from. Honestly, I've mostly been getting a similar look from putting my dead palm leaf branches in a vase. It sounds ridiculous, but yes, I've killed off all these little palm plants that were on my patio. They didn't get the love they deserved or the sunlight. Apparently, I'm struggling to keep them alive. They're supposed to be easy. But putting those in a vase, everyone has been commenting, like, where did you get those plants? Like, where can I find them? Like, I don't know. I just killed them. But they really do look so good because they dried out nice and they turned brown. And now they look like a frond, like a palm frond. And they have so much texture. It is the perfect neutral shade to coordinate with my grass cloth in my living room shelves. So that's what I've been using more than pampas grass, but it's definitely a trend I'm seeing a lot of people get into and thinking that they should just go cut them out in the wild from parks and such around ponds. I wanted to give you the more sophisticated way to rock this trend, which is to find an amazing dealer and use those 2 tips for styling. So I will link it in the show notes so you can figure out how to rock that trend in your space. Today, I'm sitting down with interior designer Kate Lester for an amazing conversation filled with design advice, including tips for how to bring some everyday luxury into your space. Some of Kate's past clients have included professional athletes, entertainment industry insiders, and the Hollywood elite. One scroll through Kate's Instagram and you will fall in love with her style just as I have. It's so comfy, but so luxurious. Kate has been featured in places like House Beautiful, House and Home, Martha Stewart, Lonnie, Cottages and Bungalows, HGTV, Hunker, and more. Let's dive into this amazing conversation with Kate. Hey, Kate, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited too.
Oh my gosh, of course. So, as we dive in, I just want to give our listeners kind of just a glimpse of your story, kind of how you got into design and maybe like who you help every day and how you help them.
Sure. So I did not actually grow up with the intent of wanting to be a designer. I wasn't one of those ladies who was, rearranging my room every day and
Hmm.
that sort of thing that you often hear when people are creatives. I actually wanted to be a very important businesswoman. So
Hmm.
I wanted to have a briefcase and a cellular phone. Back in the
Hmm.
80s, that was a very big deal.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do great things and work with important men and be like in an office at the top of a building. I wasn't sure what sort of businessy business I was going to be
Uh-huh.
doing, but
Yeah.
I wanted to be very businessy. So I did not want to be creative. I wanted to make lots of money and be important. So that led me into actually a foray into business school, and I did go to business school at USC.
Mm.
Once I got into corporate America, I realized that it was such a different vibe than what I had always
Yes.
envisioned.
Yeah.
I didn't work in
Hmm.
New York. I wasn't like those girls I'd read about in Cosmo where I'd leave my cute apartment and go to a high rise and then go to
Mhm.
happy hour. It just was totally different, right? There was so much structure. There wasn't a lot of thinking outside the box back
Mm.
then, right? When you're working in corporate America in a financial capacity, you have to fit inside a box, and it just wasn't for me. I didn't envision myself staying there for the long run. So that's when I decided to get into interior design. I knew I was always creative, and I just never thought I could make any money doing it. And at that
Mhm,
point, I
mhm.
thought, you know what? I really just want to be happy in my career, and I will figure out a way to make money doing it. I'm pretty business savvy. So I'm just going to make the leap. That is how I got into design. I decided one day that I was going to give my resignation and I was
Mhm.
going to go back to school and bartend at night.
Yeah.
And I did it. It was a crazy leap, but that's sort of how I got started.
That's so, so cool. I see so many parallels in my story because I was in oil and gas finance, which is so
Okay.
specific. But yeah, so I feel like you go to design school, you go to work for someone and kind of like, absorb like everything they have to offer day to day. And then at some point, do you kind of like you have to step out and kind of find your own like design style and your own like voice as a designer? Can you speak to
Yeah.
like what that process, I guess, looks
Yeah,
like?
you do. And by the way, I feel like some people sort of know that all along. Like maybe if they embrace their creativity, they've known what their style and vibe is far before I did. But because I had kind of stifled my creativity in order to sort of get into the business world and focus on, what I thought I wanted to do, it took me a little longer to sort of find my own, I call it my own voice, right? And,
Right,
and that
right.
voice translates into my social media, my style for clothes, my style for design.
Mm,
It took me a little longer to, I always thought that as a designer, I needed to be like the designers that I looked up to. And most of them were a little bit more traditional, they were a little bit more formal. And so, even the designer I worked for, he was a man, he was a gay man. And
right.
so his style was different than my style. And I think it's great to learn from someone else because you're making your mistakes on their dime, which is,
Right, right.
part of the process. It's the circle of business and design.
Mhm.
There's girls that work for me that are making mistakes on my dime, and that's okay. That's
Right.
part of the circle of life. But I think, embracing your style and your quirks and what makes you unique as, whoever you are, even as a designer or just as a person, is really when I think everything starts to come together, and
Yeah.
everything becomes easier and maybe even more fun if you feel like
Mhm.
you're not trying to fit, you're not trying to emulate someone else, you're you. So
Exactly.
that's when I think it took me a couple of years on my own. I would say it took me about 3 years on my own before I really started to say, like, okay, and you get more confident as you go so that
Mhm,
you're
mhm.
more willing to throw out those unique ideas or things that are more true to your style. So it takes time. I don't want people to think that happens right away.
No, sure. So I feel like you're doing that more in like the formal design setting where you're really trying to establish your voice. Do you have any like tips or parallels for like the everyday girl who's trying to do that in her own home, kind of sifting through like all the noise of trends or like what color we're
Yes.
using this year to find
We were
that?
just talking about this at our office because I think that my team and we have such an appreciation for all things great design, right? And that's good, but it's also bad because sometimes
Right.
I'll see a super traditional chair, like an old Queen Anne or something. I'll be like, oh my God, I love that.
Mm,
And then I'll want to buy it and put it in my house. But really, that's not my house vibe. So
right.
I love it, but it's not what I'm doing. It's not my story that's happening in my current home, right? So
Right.
I think for a long time, I try to like work everything in that I liked. And the truth is, you're going to like things that you don't need to buy and incorporate it into your home.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
set a story for your home, set a vibe. Sometimes we name our projects, right? Like this is
Mhm.
project a little bit Spanish, a little bit California. So we're going to call it Spanifornia. And
Mhm.
when you're shopping or you're designing or you're pulling things on the internet, then look at that. Look at those concept boards, look at those Pinterest boards and say, does this fit my story? It may be a great
Mhm.
chair, but if it doesn't fit your story, it helps you edit so much faster and weed through those trends and weed through everything that's out there and really start to narrow down what makes it more you.
That's really beautiful. I love the idea of calling it a story. And so we have like this core design story we're tying everything back to. How deep does that go? Like is it just kind of a story about like aesthetics and looks, or are you infusing like your personality and some of like your personal story into that story to make it like, I don't know, more
Yeah,
comprehensive, I
it
guess, if
can
that's
be really whatever you want, right? So when we start with like a tack board in our office, we have like an old school cork board, right? A huge
Mm,
one. And when
yeah.
we start doing some brainstorming, or we call it design development for a project, we start just tacking things up. So sometimes I'll come in and it'll be a fabric, and it'll be one piece of fabric, and maybe it's a pattern, and I tack it up, and I was like, and I'll be like, this is the vibes
Mm,
for the
mhm.
house. And my team will be
Mhm.
like, oh, super. So, like maybe it's a flower, maybe it's a color palette you've seen in a fashion magazine, right? But you're like, I don't know why, but I love this. And this is the feel or the vibe, or maybe it's a piece of art. And I think that's, you just have to start somewhere, and
Mm,
then you
mhm.
sort of grow from there. But it by no means does it have to be. I mean, sometimes it's a picture of a restaurant, or I'll say, oh, I stayed at this hotel and the feel of the room was really great, and I don't know what it was, but here's a picture of it. And then we sort of dissect it. Like, what did I love? Did I love that it was a little mid-century modern, but it had
Mhm.
traditional wallpaper? Like, what did, and you sort of work backwards on why you're attracted to those special inspiration items, and that will help you sort of grow the concept, I think.
I love that so much because one of the, like, themes that keeps emerging on the show is this, like, beginner, I think, designer mistake where you're, like, designing in a void, like, you're at HomeGoods and you're just kind of collecting all the things you love and there's no, like, common thread or theme or story. So, yeah, that starting place is so key.
It's really important to create, like, and this is so easy now that everyone has a computer and
Mhm.
Microsoft Word, or I mean, if you know Photoshop, you can do it. But what I tell people is, if you're just starting out, and let's say you're doing your apartment, right? And you're on a super tight budget. We've all been there. By no means am I, just because I'm, a fancy designer, by no means did I not have like $500 to do my college apartment, right? So
Right, right.
what I want you to do at home is start out with your concept, okay? And then put all of the pieces that you're interested in on a concept board, and
Mhm.
take that board with you when you're shopping and when you're at Home Goods and you're ready to do those stupid impulse purchases. Take that board out and be like, is this going to vibe with my vibe? And if not, put it down. Like, I can't tell you how much money I've wasted at Target and Home Goods and IKEA just on those little impulse purchases. Like, oh, that's a
Yeah,
cute cushion, but it doesn't
right.
even go with anything in your house?
Mhm.
So I think that will help a lot of, that spending, and then it'll allow you to save up for those really special items that maybe you thought were out of your budget. You'd be surprised how, if you rein in those impulse purchases, how saving for those more special items is easier.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so beautifully put. When you say it, it sounds so obvious, but that's definitely something I
Oh,
struggled
you
with.
go
Like,
in
we
there.
bought our first
Yeah.
house. So
Yeah,
hard.
you go into Home Goods and you're like, "Oh my god, I totally need this dog bowl. What am I gonna do if I don't buy this dog bowl?" Like, I get it. It's
Yeah,
something in the air there, but
yeah.
I try to
Exactly.
say, yeah, I try to say, stick with your list, and stick with your concept board, and then there are great finds there. I've found some really great things that work with my vibe,
Mm,
try to stay true to that and not get excited and put everything in your cart.
I love that so much. So, we talked a little bit about finding, like, some examples of inspo pieces, like the flower or the photo. What are some of your favorite places that you draw inspiration from? Is it kind of, like, all over the place, or do you have, like, kind of go-to things that really deeply inspire you?
You know, of course, let's be really honest and frank here. Pinterest is the
Mhm.
bomb. It's amazing,
Mhm.
right? So I will say that if you're on, those first few hundred pages of Pinterest, it's the same stuff over and over
Yes.
and over, right? So if your
Right.
vibes are different, you're going to have to do a deep dive.
Yep,
So what
yep.
we like to say is, find that, chair that you love, or find that, whatever it is, maybe it's, maybe you're really into mid-century, right? And you figure out the name of a chair that you like. Deep dive into that, and then that will take you to other really interesting rooms, and you'll get away from the sort of, stuff you're seeing everywhere. So
Mhm.
Pinterest is good if you're willing to sit down and do a deep dive. I like to do old school books, like, books, real hard books. Find a designer or topic that you're interested. If you want a farmhouse, then do some searching on Amazon, order some, farmhouse design books. You can get great inspiration from those pages that, a lot of that stuff is not on Pinterest. So you're not
Sure,
going to be
yeah.
seeing that everywhere. I get a lot of inspiration from fashion magazines. What are the color palettes
Mhm.
that are happening? How are the clothes structured? Is everything floral and soft, or is everything sharp edges? And how do I feel about that? And is that going to translate into, if I pick more curved items, or I think you will just sort of start to develop your style when you're pulling things, because people don't realize that they have their own pattern that emerges.
Yes.
And when
Yes.
our clients do a Pinterest board for us, they'll say, "Well, don't I need to tell you what I like in each picture?" And I
Mhm.
say, "No, because I can tell. It's repeating throughout what you're picking." So I think that happens with regular people too, right? So
Uh-huh.
start picking, make a pile, tear things out, tack things up, and you'll start to see a pattern, and then you can kind of narrow it down from there.
Right. I feel like part of your job as a designer is obviously like these beautiful spaces, but there's another level of like really kind of like helping your clients figure out who they are style wise. And that's something I feel like that when you can do that artfully, like that's when you get the coolest spaces. What does that process look like? You kind of mentioned the Pinterest board, but is that where you start or there's a consultation? Like, what does that look like?
Well, most of our projects are really large scale, right? So we're starting with these people when maybe they're buying a dirt lot and we're having to design their home from the ground up, right? And
Right,
then
right.
we're not only designing, the interiors, but we're designing all the finishes, fixtures, and then all the furnishings. So the first thing we like to do is save them from themselves, right? Because
Mhm.
if we're giving them everything they're asking for, like what the hell do they need us for, right? So
Right.
the first thing we do is we weed through these Pinterest boards, and we ask them to, pull some images, maybe 10, 20 images. It's really all we need. We start to see a pattern of what they like, and from there we say, how can we take this and make it cool? Because most
Mhm,
of the time
mhm.
it's not that cool, right? So how do we take this and push their boundaries? How can we take their level 2 coolness and make it a level 10, right? If we see that they're really into brass, how do we rein that in and say, okay, well, this house has to have longevity. And what if brass isn't trending in 6 years, right?
Mm,
How do we incorporate those things that we see that they're gravitating toward in a way that will live with them for a long time? So a lot of times it's really just pushing their boundaries and saying, I see that you've posted a couple of pieces of contemporary art. These are boring, but how about
mhm.
these five, right? So our job is to take them right to the edge of where they would say, I never would have picked that, but I actually love that.
Right.
And that's what you want to try to do to yourself if you're at home, right? Do I love this? I know everyone has this chair, but I found this chair and it's kind of weird, but it's kind of great and I love it.
Mhm.
So, how can you get outside that box of trends and really do something unique?
Yeah, I think that's so cool because people are obviously drawn to your work and your style because they feel like part of themselves in it or they see that as something they want, but then kind of meshing that with their own personal taste, I feel like is such an art that, yeah, you're doing really well based on your whole feed and all your projects. Gorgeous.
I think people are afraid to infuse their personality because what they're seeing on the internet, right? So
Yes.
I think it's okay to emulate what you see on the internet, but I think it's much more interesting to make a space your own. And
Right.
maybe you don't have to do a pattern sofa, like go with your tan sofa if that makes you comfortable and it fits your budget, right? But maybe
Mm.
infuse some really interesting art or some wall covering. Or I think that to me, it's so much more pleasing to see a space that maybe I wouldn't do, but is very interesting than it is for
Yes.
me to flip through a magazine and just see the same thing over and over. So I
Absolutely.
guarantee, you're going to evoke a response from people. And if it makes you happy, then it really doesn't matter.
Right.
It should really showcase who you are. And the house should be a story of the people who live there, not a story of what you saw on Pinterest.
Oh my gosh, for sure, and that's a lesson you learn pretty quick when you start putting your house on the internet for everyone to weigh in on, so yeah,
Trust
totally
me,
feel that.
yes, everybody wants to give you, their 2 cents, and that's okay because what I will say I am unique in the sense that I have a thick skin. Like, sometimes literally because the
Right.
COVID, right? But I have a thick skin in the sense that when you are opening your home or your designs or what's, what you've created for 50,000 or 60,000 people to judge, because that's
Right.
what people do on the internet,
Mhm.
you learn really quickly that, for me, a comment, whether it's positive, negative, whatever it is, engaging, it's engagement, right? And so I've caught someone's attention on the thousands of scrolls that they're doing a day. And to me, we did something right. I would
Mhm.
much rather someone leave a room that we design and say, oh my God, that room was crazy, or oh my God, I don't like that. Why did they paint the walls blue, or whatever it is? Because now they're talking about my space and they've
Yes.
left hundreds of other rooms that they didn't talk about because they were so boring.
Right? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
So,
that's so true. And then on the other side, it's like you inspired them by showing something that they clearly don't like now they have refined what they do like even more, like, it's
exactly.
definitely not a blue ceiling. So,
So
like, you've
you're
helped them,
welcome.
right? You're so welcome.
Right? You're so welcome. So I
Right.
think you have to, if you're, working on your own space or whatever it is, just sort of own it and have your confidence and say, this is what I feel, and this is what is, maybe you enlarge a picture that your child drew and it's important to you and it's meaningful. I'd much rather see that than like a home goods canvas, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
so make it your own and make it interesting, and that will never let you down, I think.
Oh, I love that. So, a topic I want to dive into because we talk about it a lot on the show in terms of like your house is never done. Like, don't be afraid to try things. You can always
Right.
undo it. Like, the house you have
Right.
now is based on the phase of life you're in now. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like design used to be like you decorate your house, you leave it for 10 years, and then you redo
Yeah,
it. Are
totally.
you seeing more like style evolving quicker? Like we're not redoing whole spaces all the time, but we're like swapping things in and out more consistently, like in projects that are quote unquote done? What does that
Yeah, I
look
think
like?
it kind of depends on your level of, okay, so there's a couple of things.
Mhm.
I grew up where in a house where both my parents worked, right? And so yes, my mom designed our house once, and I swear to God the tablecloth did not change
Right.
until I left to get married.
Uh-huh.
So like, and then she sold the house or whatever, right? So like,
Yeah.
yes, I think it depends maybe how busy you are, right? We have some clients that say like, I want to do this and I want to do this one time and I don't want to touch anything. I just want it to be done. They want to like check it off their list. And then we have the clients where the women are like, "Oh, I love design and I want to be involved." And most of the time those ladies may not hire a designer because they want to do it themselves, right? So, if you do like swapping things out, then I would say invest in your big pieces, and
Mm.
if you do want to swap things and move things around and you have the time and energy and budget to do that, then yes, pillows, rugs, those kind of things are great. But I think it's much more smart or much smarter, much more interesting to really make a plan and invest in the pieces in your plan every couple of years. So your place just gets better. It doesn't keep like
Right, right.
changing. You're just saying, you're evolving, but you're investing in these really great pieces instead of buying 100 throw pillows at Home Goods, right?
Right, yeah.
So I think for me, it's saying, okay, I'm going to use this coffee table from IKEA until I can afford this great vintage one that I've had my eye on
Mm.
forever.
Mhm.
And then investing in that and sort of growing your art collection or your accessories or whatever it is, or investing in beautiful drapery or shades. So I think for me, it's about finding maybe the special pieces instead of more pieces.
Right,
And
right.
I think that may be an American thing where we're like, more is more pillows, more, I want to redo it. I want to redo it instead of, are these special? Does this
Right.
mean something to me? Does this evoke a response in me? Is this something no one on my block has, right? How can you make it unique to you? So I would say if you can, yeah, I think things are always more evolving now than they were when we were kids. But if you can, try not to over evolve and really invest in those great pieces that speak to you.
I really like that. Instead of like we're hopping around with all the trends, changing things
Yeah.
up, it's more of like an up leveling and a real like evolution, like getting better, getting more sophisticated, getting more like
Yes.
true to us. I like
Your
that. That's
home
a
should
really good
grow
point.
with you, right?
Yeah.
So as you become more sophisticated and more interesting and more well traveled and more knowledgeable, then so should your pieces, I think. So I think if you're investing as you grow, then your home will actually ultimately reflect that. without you
Right.
maybe even noticing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really good. Really, really good. So I feel like a lot of DIY designers obviously aren't hiring a designer, but I
Yeah.
feel like you see a lot of DIY designer mistakes firsthand in the sense that clients are coming to you like, "We wanna do this," and you, like, stop them from doing the thing
Yeah.
that they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for, like, DIY design and, like, maybe some mistakes to avoid that you hear clients telling you, like, "We wanna do this," and you're like, "Nah."
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that, well, first let's start and say that by the time that something gets to Pinterest, okay, this is something that we talk about a lot in our office. You have to work backwards, right? So that means
Mm,
that, if you're on Pinterest and you're getting your inspiration from there, that means that, about 2 years ago, a designer put that concept together, right? Then they implemented it, the builder built it, then they photographed it, then it was published, then it got to Pinterest, right? So a lot of times that's a 2 year delay on a trend. So
right.
I think you want to be a little bit careful when you are looking at what's in magazines because those are things that we've done already, right? So
Mhm,
how can you
mhm.
take that trend and sort of elevate that? And then sometimes I think people rely on these trends and then by the time they implement them in their own home, they're already switching and they're frustrated. So,
Right.
I think it's about if you're staying more true again, staying more true to what you like and finding an elevated version of that, you'll give yourself more longevity, right? A
Mm,
few things
mhm.
that I will say that people do, and they always do incorrectly, is people think that smaller furniture makes your house look bigger. This is
Mhm.
wrong. Okay. Smaller furniture makes it look like you bought smaller furniture because you didn't measure. So,
Right, right.
invest in pieces that fill your space. Okay. What are you going to do with those odd corners? The best example is a bedroom, a headboard wall. People buy those little tiny nightstands and then they're left with what, like 2 feet on each side of the
Yeah,
nightstand. And what goes there? Like
right.
nothing, right? A pile of socks or who knows.
Uh-huh. Less
So,
pennies. Yeah.
yes. So put a writing desk on one side, put a 3 drawer chest on the other side, maximize your space, go with a large bed, go with a nice size headboard, get some lamps, and you would be surprised that when you expand and you actually utilize all the space that you're given, the room feels bigger. And if I had a dollar for every time a client said to me, I didn't believe you, but you were totally right. When it comes to
Mhm.
bigger items, actually make the space feel bigger. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't measure. It means you should measure, but maximize your space. Buy a properly sized rug. All of your furniture legs should sit on your rug. If you
Mm.
cannot afford the size rug that you want, then buy a larger size rug and layer a cool rug on top of it, right?
Yeah.
But get those furniture legs on a rug and it will create a better seating area. It'll make the space feel larger, softer, it'll add texture. So those are some mistakes we see. Painting an accent wall, like if you love the color, go for it. Paint the whole room. It's just paint.
Mhm.
So I say try to steer away from accent walls, like go big or go home. If you're not sure, then paint the trim, paint the window trim and the baseboards and the doors instead. And then you have a pop of that color, but you've committed and you're not just like randomly painting one wall. So those are some of my tried and true favorites that I walk in and I'm like, don't match all your metals. Like mix your
Mhm.
metals a little bit. Have some fun with that. And, I think things like that, taking those smaller risks, those are super inexpensive changes that can make a really dramatic difference.
So having designed had your training in a more traditional style of design and then kind of stepping out and having your own voice that's a little less traditional, is there anything in, like, traditional design, like, old school advice that you're just like, "No, not this anymore, it doesn't work,
I
wouldn't
think,
recommend?"
yeah, traditional design is really, it's rooted in I think it's rooted in a lot of different ways, but I think in the South, they're still really doing that. A lot of designers are still doing that traditional design, which is like you
Mm,
match the
mhm.
drapes to the pillows, which matches
Yep.
the trim on whatever, and then there's tassels and there's like all kinds of things and everything feels decorated. And I say that in a, like, that's not a bad word, but if you walk in and you're like, oh, definitely there was a decorator here, right?
Right, right.
So I think for me, because of my lifestyle, because of the way I grew up in like a beach community and I'm much more casual. I don't have a formal lifestyle. I didn't grow up that way. So for me, when I translate a really well designed space, it's like livable luxury. It's not
Mm,
formal and matchy and stiff. It's for me, it's about people walking into the space and being like, I don't know why, but this is rad. And I'm
mm,
not sure if it's the pillows or the rug or what, but I like it. And maybe it feels more collected and curated and it doesn't feel decorated.
right.
So that's how I've learned that I separate myself is, like let's stop decorating and let's start curating and really
Mm,
making a space your own, and I think that's what makes it interesting and that's what makes it hip and fresh, and it's okay to use all the rooms in your house. So
right,
please do it
right.
because we're all struggling to like just pay our mortgages and live where we want, and so
Right.
just use the rooms. Like please don't create a room that no one's going to use. So
Yes.
our design philosophy is making each room special, and how do we do that? And you can now, like, outdoor fabrics are super soft so you can put them inside and then you can have a light
Mm,
sofa even if you have kids with avocado face.
right,
So
right.
things are evolving, and I think that that livable luxury hopefully is trending,
Yeah.
and that people will see that you can have beautiful things and live in your space at the same time.
I feel like that's something a lot of people forget is that all these like design methodologies and design trends like had origin in like an actual lifestyle and an actual way of living. And so
Totally.
like you have to embrace that before you can take on like how to design and follow like a method, like a traditional decorating method or whatever it is. But I feel like, yeah, spot on. Like a lot of people are totally feeling that like livableness is way more important than like aesthetics. So we're definitely moving that way. And that's like so
Yeah.
exciting because it's so much more
Like, I'll skip
attainable.
the
Yeah.
embroidery with my initials, right? Because I already know
Hmm.
what my name is, but I
Right.
will invest that money in a better quality sheet set, right? So
Yes.
I
Mm.
think it's about, maybe I don't have 1,000 photographs of my family in posed formal pictures, but I have one or two that are really special to me throughout the
Right.
house, right? So it's really, I think before people were decorating for other people, and now people are
Yes.
decorating for themselves. And
Mm.
I hope that it continues to be that way. Like I use my plates every day. We don't have special plates
Right.
because
Same.
if anybody deserves the freaking good plates, it's me. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Every day
right?
it's me. I
Every
earned
day.
it.
Yeah. Hello. So, in my guest room, it doesn't have the best bedding. My bed has the best bedding because I sleep
Yes.
there every day. So I think
Hmm.
a lot of things were about impressing other people. And, if you give 0 Fs and you're like, look, if you want to come to my house, like it's awesome, but it's not a Four Seasons, so relax. I think people get that and invest in products that will make their life better. They work hard, you work hard. So, cut yourself some slack and invest in things that you're going to be able to use every day.
Yeah, I'm so on board. That's so
Yeah.
perfect. I think when people are like finding inspo on Pinterest or really just being sold to by brands,
Yeah.
the term luxury comes up a lot. And it's usually in this like, I don't know, like salesy way, like
Oh, totally.
brands to consumers very like luxury, like they overhype everything. But as an actual luxury designer working with like Hollywood elites and working with people in the luxury space, what does that really look like? What does it really mean? And what are maybe some like trends you're seeing in this space?
It's a good question because isn't it funny how now on Instagram everything is luxury? There's like a luxury
Mhm.
razor. There's like a
Right?
luxury I'm sorry, there's a luxury razor. Like I can't just get my
What?
razors at CVS. Okay.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. It's oversold. And I am the master of high low. Like I will literally wear $600 Gucci sneakers with like $20 jeans I got at Target, right?
Yes.
So my tip to anyone who wants luxury is like know what you're investing in, right?
Mm,
And I wear sneakers every day. So it's more important to me that those are comfortable and those are going to last. And I change my style of jeans like every 6 months, right? With the trends.
mhm.
So sometimes I'll buy fancy ones, but sometimes I'll fill in with Target. And I think you should utilize that same sort of concept when you're talking about your home. I will tell you that even people who are spending $500,000, $1 million on furniture, they're never putting super nice stuff in their kids' rooms. They're always saying, let's go to Crate and Barrel. Let's go to, like, what can we find on sale? What can we find?
Right.
Can I put this chair from Amazon in my kids' room? Like, and
Mhm,
they're saying to
mhm.
us, I want you to use 80% of my budget on the main spaces in my bedroom and use 20% of my budget on my kid's space because they're a kid.
Right.
So
Mhm.
don't beat yourself up for saying, I really wish my kids' room looked like that, like what you may see in a magazine, because you don't know where that came from, right? You don't know
Right.
that I didn't buy a play table from Target and just style it with some really cool art that I had, right?
Mhm.
So I think, luxury means utilizing your budget wisely and saying, okay, I'm going
Sure.
to invest in these really comfortable sofas. Upholstery pieces, rugs, and art are, light fixtures. A lot of times when we're building new, those are the areas we spend money
Mm.
on, the things that are going to last you, your plumbing, your, anything that's attached to your house, right? So I think it's about investing in pieces that will give you longevity. That's what luxury is. It's saying, okay, I'm an adult now. I've gotten to the point where I can sort of wrangle my children a little bit. I'm going to invest
Mhm.
in a nice sofa that is good bones that I could reupholster every 10 years if I needed to, right?
Right.
That's luxury. Like sitting down in a sofa that you sink into and you're like, oh, this is amazing. Or a great set of sheets or bedding.
Mm.
It was years we were married before I, convinced my husband, like, we're going to spend $800 on bedding, $1,000 on bedding, whatever it is. And he's
Mhm.
like, what? No way. And then we put it on and he crawled into bed and he's like, this is the best money we ever spent, and
Right.
now, like, so I think it's about when you go to a really nice hotel and you lay in that bed, don't you want that feeling every night after a really long day?
Mm.
So what are those
Mhm.
little moments of luxury? Is it a mug that you really wanted and you've been coveting? And, so when you have your coffee in the morning, you feel super fabulous and worthy. Whatever it is it your
Right.
dinnerware? It's saying to yourself, I'm going to invest in these pieces. And I think for me, that's what luxury is. It's being patient and investing in pieces that, instead of buying 10 sets of silverware from Target and they're crap, so you have to replace them like
Right.
every 5 years,
Yep.
then save up for those Heath ceramics, gorgeous silverware, and buy a little bit at a time, and then you have it forever. So to me, that is luxury, is saying, I'm going to invest in these pieces that will bring me little bits of joy in this crazy world and crazy time. Um,
Mhm.
every time you open that sunglasses case that you splurged on, aren't you excited? So I think it's something that you can do at home. It doesn't have to be every single piece, but, adding a little bit of luxury is really what's important to you, what brings you joy.
I think that's really beautiful advice for not only, like, sifting through the noise, but also, yeah, kind of like, I don't know, like, personal sustainability and having that patience and all the stuff that isn't flashy. It's not like the fun trend or the shiny new thing that you just got, but it's like over your lifetime, it's gonna make you happier and it's gonna be more reliable and more satisfying versus, like, chasing trends because 'cause you're never gonna be there. Like we said, you'll be 2 years
Totally.
late at minimum, so
Yeah, right. Well, and I think, I don't want people to think like I was never that person. I was that person when I was in college, like buying from Forever
Right.
21 and having
Mhm.
like 34 tank tops. Like you don't,
Sure.
and as I got older, and my sister works in the fashion industry, and she was sort of saying to me, like, please spend on a few really quality pieces and then you can mix and match them with these,
Mm.
scarves and belts and things that you want to mix in. And I sort of took that advice and translated it into my entire life. And,
Right.
every time I go to buy something, I say, am I just filling this cart because, like, am I just grabbing this pillow at, Home Goods because I want to today? Like, do I need
Right.
this? And,
Mm.
it's almost like the Marie Kondo thing. Like, is this going to bring me joy or am I literally just spending $30? And how much every time you spend $30 does that add up? So,
Right.
so I think that it's just maybe being more conscious about your purchases and your investments and really considering them investments.
I love that. That's definitely something I had to learn as well, and I'm still learning. So this is a really good
Yeah.
encouragement that I'm on the right
I think
path.
it's a lifelong learning. I'm not gonna say I don't do it,
Right.
especially when it comes to, like, holiday decor and, like,
Uh-huh.
Halloween
Uh-huh.
skeletons and,
Guilty.
right? I'm like, "What did we just buy? Why do we need another skeleton?" So
Right.
it happens, but I think being more cognizant of it is a step in the right direction.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think that's really going to resonate with listeners. Is there any, like, just like to
Yeah.
wrap us up, just any advice or any like words of wisdom when it comes to design or interiors that you maybe wish you knew or you just really want to share?
Well, I think when you are designing, I think it's all about planning. I was writing an article for Martha Stewart Living this morning, and I'm talking about planning. And if you're
Right.
remodeling, plan. If you're, building a new home, plan. Essentially, that's what we do for people. So if you're
Right.
decorating a bathroom or a living room or whatever it is, instead of getting excited and buying everything, sit down at your computer, print some things out, tack them up on a wall, see how they look together, and really plan and be organized and set goals. And I think that the more time you take to thoughtfully plan your space, then I think that really shows in the end result. So as hard as it may be to be patient, and but everyone
Mhm.
has more time at home, so yay, you can get on your
Yeah.
computer and you can make a concept board and you can print it out and make sure you like it in a week. And you know I think really sort of edit yourself, edit everything. And that's what we are. We're editors of people's homes. And so
Mm.
if people can take more time and edit, I think that the end result will be interiors that are more thoughtfully created and curated.
I
So
love
so aim for that. Yes.
Yeah, and along those lines, it's not just what should I add, but what should I take away? Like when you said edit, that really came to mind is like we're not only just adding what's missing, we're like taking away what's not working, and that's a step that's like so important. Like to do
Hard.
the full edit, not just
Yeah.
addition. So,
Or
yeah.
editing your cart. Like, do you edit your cart before you go to the checkout? I do. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
wait a minute. What do I really need here? Because I get a little impulsive. I'm like, okay, fine, 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 fine. You just edit everything and pare down and edit. And I think that in a world where more is more, can we be the opposite? Can we say more interesting is more?
Yes. More thoughtful, more conscious. I love that so much.
I'm on my way back home.
Love this episode? Leave a comment on the blog post or use Make Space Podcast to share your thoughts. If this is your first time listening in, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay updated with the newest episodes. If you're a subscriber and you love the show, be sure to rate, review, or screenshot and share your favorite episode on social.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.